youtube.com/openupyourmind101.
But the other type of motivation involves someone else in the world pressuring you to do something, trying to get you to do something. So, parents offer kids rewards for doing things, or they threaten them with punishments for doing things, and so do bosses, and so do teachers sometimes, and so forth. So here we've got motivation that's coming from the outside. When that happens to you, when people are trying to pressure you into doing something, you can respond in one of two ways. Well, there's more than two, but I'll talk about two. One is you can buckle under and do it. The authority told me to do it, and I'm going to do what the authority says, because that's what I'm supposed to do. That's compliance. When you're complying to an authority because the authority told you to do it, then you're being controlled. That's not you making a choice. That's you being forced by someone else. So that's compliance. Sometimes, however, when the pressures and controls get great, you've just had enough, and you'll be darned if you're going to be doing any more of this. So you rebel. You react against it, and you defy the authority. So what you do now is not necessarily what you want to do, but it's what you're doing because you're trying to prove something to the authority. You can't get away with this with me. I'll just defy you. The interesting thing is, those are the opposite behaviors that you'd be doing. If you comply, you do what the authority wants you to because the authority wants you to. If you defy, you're doing the opposite of what the authority wants you to because the authority wants you to. In both cases, interestingly, you're being controlled by that authority. You're not coming to a point of making a true choice for yourself, knowing what's right for you and making the decision to do that.
And now, very interestingly, you also talk about how people can be controlled without their even knowing it. You talk about people having they've internalized the controls from society or whoever the authority figure is, whether it's their parent or their teacher, and then they respond compliantly without even realizing they're doing it.
That's exactly right. And let me give you a kind of example of how this works. One of the ways that parents use to try and socialize their children is what we call conditional regard. Parents will be conveying, it's not that they say this out loud to their kids, but some maybe do, but one way or another they convey to the child, I will love you if you do what I want you to do and be the person I want you to be, and I won't love you if you don't. That's conditional regard or conditional love if you prefer that. That's an amazing way to get children to do things. I mean, kids will do things if they believe their parents' love is contingent upon their doing those things. Okay.
But that doesn't develop a love.
So we get controlled by our parents.
Wait, let me just stop you and ask you, that doesn't develop any sort of love for what they're doing. They're maybe not even focusing on that. They're just chasing the love of the parent.
Exactly. You're exactly right about that. But the interesting thing that happens is then they tend to internalize those contingencies, take them into themselves, and they start doing to themselves what their parents initially did to them. So now, if my mother had said to me, Ed, I'll love you if you do X, Y, and Z, and I won't love you if you don't, I did it to get her love. But as I grow a little more, I begin to take that in, and now I'm essentially saying to myself, Ed, I will love you if you do this, and I won't love you if you don't. Now, of course, I don't say it in that way. The psychological way of talking about that is contingent self-esteem. My feeling of worth as a person becomes dependent on those kinds of things. So now I'm essentially from the inside pushing myself around. I'm trying to make myself lose weight or study harder for an exam or whatever it is, because I have this internal contingency that says, I won't feel like a worthy person unless I do it. That's what we are referring to by this kind of internal control, in which we push ourselves around, not realizing exactly what it is that we're doing. But the first thing that the first study takes the form that, imagine you're doing something that's really interesting to you, a puzzle to solve or something else, whatever it is, but something that's really interesting to you. It turns out that if you're doing something that's really interesting, and then I come along and say, I would like you to do that activity there, the one that you were interested in, and because I'd like you to do it, I'm going to pay you to do it. So now you start to do some activity that you find really interesting and internally motivating, something you enjoy, and you're going to get paid for doing it. You would think that's the best of both worlds, wouldn't you? But the interesting thing is that once people started getting paid to do something that was interesting, they stopped finding it interesting. They shifted their relationship to that task from something that I do this because it's interesting to now I do this because it's something that will get me paid. And when they do that, they no longer have that relationship with the task in which they're truly engaged and involved with it. These external rewards, for instance, in this case, the money that I was talking about, actually come to control people's behavior. And once their behavior becomes controlled by it, the activities that they initially liked come to be not any longer interesting. They become simply instrumental to getting some kind of reward. So they lose their own sense of internal motivation for it.
Yeah, I think it's so important to point out, because by pointing it out, we can maybe notice it in ourselves.
youtube.com/openupyourmind101